Hey guys, hope you're having a good day or night so far. Today I'll be going over the skip machine problem. So this is a what would Python display problem and it's based on generators. So generators are a specific type of iterator, and when the generator function is called, it returns a generator object. So let's see what I'm talking about. Here we have a class skip machine. It has one class variable, skip. It has a constructor, and it has the generator function called generate. So I can label this the generator function. So we know that this is a generator function because it has a yield statement. This means that whenever this is called, it returns a generator object. Okay, so we can jump into the problem. Here we have a sequence of statements that we're executing. So first, we're creating a variable called p and assigning it to a skip machine instance. So we can draw the environment diagram on the right here. Okay, so we create a skip machine instance. So when we create an instance, we always call the constructor. So here for our instance of skip machine, we call the constructor, and we have a default value where n is set to 2 if we don't pass any n value in. And here we see that we didn't pass anything into the constructor, so n defaults to 2. So now our stop.skip variable, I'll go into that a little bit later, is equal to n plus skipmachine.skip. So the difference between stop.skip and skipmachine.skip is that skipmachine.skip is a class variable that's shared across all instances of the class. So every time we create a new instance, it shares the same skipmachine.skip variable. However, stop.skip is an instance variable that's unique to each instance of a class. That means that different classes can have different values for stop.skip. So here, when we create an instance of skip machine, we're assigning it to n plus our class variable for skip. So our variable for n is 2 because we didn't pass anything in, and skipmachine.skip is 1 because we're looking at this class variable. So 2 plus 1 is 3, and stop.skip is equal to 3. Okay. So now we have another variable called twos. So twos is the result of calling the generator function of p. So we know that generator functions always return a generator object. So basically what this means is that it does not execute this function body. It simply returns a generator object. And when you call next on this generator object, it'll yield values. So this, we can say, is a generator object. Okay, so this is a generator object. So this generator object comes from calling the generator function of p. So we can just say from p. Okay, so now we increment the class variable of skip machine by 1. So we can say that in our class, so we can create a class for skip machine with a class variable skip. So previously it was 1, and now we're incrementing it to 2. Okay. Alright, so now we have another variable called twos2. And this is set to another generator object from P. So it's important to note that 2's and 2's2 are separate. So when you call next on 2's, it should not affect 2's2 because they are different generator objects. Okay, so now we have 3's. So 3's is pretty interesting because first we are creating a new skip machine instance with this line. So we can create this new instance in our environment diagram. And we know that n is 3 because we actually passed an n variable in. So that means that self.skip is n plus skipmachine.skip. So n is 3 and skipmachine.skip is 2. So 3 plus 2 is 5. The reason I crossed out n is 3 because n is not an instance variable, and in our class box we only want to include the instance variables and the methods. Alright, so for 3's, once we create this instance, we want to call its generate function, which returns the generator object from, we can just call this some instance q. So q is not an actual variable, but I'm just labeling this q so that it's easier to understand later on which instance these 3 variables are referring to. Alright, so we can get into the WWPD questions. So first we call next on 2's. So what this does is it goes into the generator function. So it actually executes this function body. So this executes generator function body. And it executes it until yield statement. And it does this repeatedly every time you call next. So the first time we call next on 2's, it executes this body up till the yield statement. So current is skipmachine.skip. So at the time when we call this generator object, which is 2's, the skipmachine.skip variable is 2. So current is set to 2. So you can just make like a little note. And we go into this while loop and we yield that current variable. So it yields 2. Okay. So then we take the 3's generator object. So recall that this is a completely separate generator object, and current is set to skipmachine.skip. So we know that skipmachine.skip is a class variable, so it's shared across all instances of the class. So we know that current is also equal to 2, and then we yield current. Alright, so then we look at 2's, which is another generator object that was different from 3's. And we're calling next again on 2's. So when we call next again, we execute from where we left off. So the previous time we call next on 2's, we left off at that yield statement. So now we want to continue executing until the second time we reach that yield statement. So after the yield statement, current is incremented by self.skip. And we see that self.skip refers to the self.skip variable in P, because 2's is a generator object that was created from calling the generator function of P. Okay, so self.skip is 3 and current is incremented by 3. So current was previously 2, and if you add 3 to it, current is 5. Then we increment our class variable by 1. So again, this is shared by all instances of the class. So we can go up to the class variable and increment it by 1 in skip machine. Okay, so then we yield current. Okay, so we call next on twos, which is the same generator object, again. So we do this again. We were at yield current. We increment current by self.skip. And we know that self.skip is 3. So current is 3 plus 5. And that's 8. And we increment our class variable for skip machine.skip. So it goes from 3 to 4. All right, then we yield current. So we yield 8. All right, so now we go back to 3s, which is the generator object that was created from calling the generator function of our instance Q. Again, Q is not an actual variable, it's just a name that we're giving to this created instance. Okay, so when we call next on 3s, it left off at yield current. So current, we increment by self.skip. So current was previously 2. And when you increment by self.skip, you look at self.skip in the instance from which 3's, the generator object, was created. So it was created in the Q instance, and self.skip for Q is 5. So we increment 5 to 2, so that is equal to 7. And finally, we increment skip machine, so it goes from 4 to 5, and we go up into the while true loop again, and we yield 7. All right, so now we have twos 2. So this is the first time that we're calling next on twos 2. So because this is the first time we're doing this, we start from the top. So I can erase this so it's a little bit easier to understand. So for twos 2, we start from the top and we go until we yield current. So current is skip machine.skip. So we do know that skip machine.skip is shared by all instances of the class. So it is 5 right now. And finally, we want to yield current. So we yield 5. Alright, so that is the video walkthrough for Skip Machine. I hope that helped, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.